Welcome to this Crreeper World 4 tutorial on how to make custom units. If you've never made a map before, I highly recommend watching the official Knucklecracker video on using the editor and getting accustomed to using the mission editor and all the various options before delving into making your own custom unit. This video will focus primarily on custom units and how to get started building them and understanding the 4RPL language and a whole other host of topics surrounding custom unit building. All right, before we get started with custom unit building, you need some tools. First off, I highly recommend using Notepad++ because there are a couple of syntax highlighters available to make it easy to build custom units. You get the nice syntax highlighting, you typed in the right function name, you didn't forget to do certain things in your syntax and things like that. So the highlighters are very helpful. So I highly recommend configuring Notepad++ to open the 4RPL file extension before you do anything in the game. The one thing I won't do here in this video is cover how to bring in meshes and textures from external resources. If you want to make a really nice unit, you're perhaps going to want to use a tool like Magicovoxel or Cubicle or Blender to design your unit, its visual appearance. I'm going to be focusing primarily on the programming aspect of it because that's the most important part, how your unit behaves in the game. Which brings us to the 4RPL scripting language. I'll get into some of the details on how to use 4RPL, but this reference that's on the Knucklecracker wiki is an excellent resource for finding a function that does the thing that you want to do, or understanding how certain things work like lists or tables or whatever. So you'll spend a huge amount of time here on the wiki looking at functions, recalling what function parameters they accept, things like that. All right, so let's go over to Crreeper World 4, and let's before I get into the mission editor, I want to go over to the Farsight Expedition, which is an actually excellent resource for getting started with 4RPL. Let's say you saw something, you're like, oh, how did the main campaign do X, Y, and Z? Well, I'm going to show you how to get at that information really easily. So I'm going to go to the Farsight Campaign, and we're going to look at how a specific thing works. So I fire up the Farsight Campaign. We get our ADA log right off the bat. There's an ADA log that appears, and then a message box appears with a button. I'm not interested in that. And then we got the pause button, doing its animation thing here. And then I'm going to unpause it for a few seconds. And immediately we see something interesting. A yellow line here appears and some text appears, and I pause the game. And in a moment, the text changes. So even though the game is paused, text is changing. That's kind of interesting. So let's say we want to build a unit. And in this case, what I'm going to build today is I'm going to build a unit. We're going to call it the Borg, as in from StarTrek. We're going to make a Borg cube. It's not going to do anything particularly exciting, but my goal is to provide a guide through the core interface objects here and be able to show you some 4RPL to kind of get you started on your way. All right, so what we're going to have our Borg cube do is we're going to have it say some text. We are the Borg, you will be assimilated, resistance is futile. So we want some text kind of like this hovering above our Borg cube. So I'm going to go into the editor, and to do that, I'm going to hold down Shift and press E. So Shift E opens the editor, and we get a little green button in the corner. And it switches to, it says edited Farsight. So if I were to play this mission right now, it would, I could play it, but I wouldn't be able to submit any scores because I've entered the editor. But this is a great way to debug and figure out how this all works. All right, one thing before I get too far along is over here in the lower left corner, maybe you noticed it when you're playing maps, is there are these numbers that change. These numbers represent X and Z coordinates on the map, with 0, 0 being the lower left corner. So if you remember your math class at all, you remember most of the time you spent you had X and Y, X being along the horizontal, Y being along the vertical, but it's a Cartesian, what's known as a Cartesian plane, and Z is distance. In most math classes, you only dealt with 2 dimensions. Well, here we're dealing with 3 dimensions. So X goes along this way, Z goes along, goes to the right, X goes to the right, Z goes depth, and Y is vertical towards the camera. So for the most part, this game is operating in the XZ plane. When you're writing 4RPL and you're targeting specific coordinates, those coordinates are primarily going to be X and Z oriented to identify where on the map you want something to happen. All right, clicking the editor button brings up the mission editor, and the first thing I like to do if I'm messing around with something like a campaign map is I'll wipe out any creeper that's on the map, make my brush size nice and big, hold down shift, and delete all this surrounding creeper, so we have plenty of opportunity to just mess around without having to worry about creeper coming in at us. All right, cool. There's all this stuff is covered in the Knucklecracker tutorial on map editing. On the game tab, we see there's a custom objective for this map its name is offline at the moment, but with 4RPL, this text can be changed to be something else. And if you use a custom objective, you have to use 4RPL to complete that custom objective. You have to tell the game that all the conditions have been met for it to turn green here, and the game to register that the mission has been completed successfully. Here's ADA messaging, and ADA messages can be referenced by 4RPL, say, show this message box with this button or these buttons, and show this message in ADA. ADA messages are pretty bare bones. You can only have images and text, but it's the text is HTML-like, and there's a whole wiki entry that covers all of these, size and color and alignment and all that stuff. So you can go check that out and make your ADA messages look nice. All right, so let's get into 4RPL building. On the mods tab, we see 2 big buttons. We see Open CPAC Manager, which I'll get to in a moment, and we have a 4RPL console. The 4RPL console is where you would put scripts that you want to basically reuse as you're developing software to be able to test things out. Back on the 4RPL tools page, if we scroll to the bottom, we see there's a little sound player here. If I click this, we see the source code to the sound player. And so there's this 4RPL file that can play all of the non-looping sounds in the game. So I actually use that here, and I could click E to edit, run once, or run. For every frame, this number increases at frame of game time. Even if it's paused, frames still increase here. And so we're running the sound player right now. It tells us, hey, there are 111 sounds available. There are also 80 looping sounds that can't be played with this. And the reason it can't be played is because looping sounds have to be associated with a unit, and there is no unit with this, so those won't work. Or more accurately, they'll work, but then they're not stoppable. So you're left with this looping sound that goes on forever. Anyway, on my keyboard, it says press 1, 2. It's actually, I have to press numlock on my keyboard, and then I have to use the number pad to switch sounds. So pressing 1 will move forward, and pressing 2 will move back through the sound list. And it says left-click mouse to listen to it. It's actually right-click on my computer for whatever reason. And so I just switched to sound 1. That's ADA message is closed. That's what that sounds like. And then I press 1 again on my keyboard, right click, and we hear ADA messages open. Okay, so in this way we can be like, hey, oh, I like the achievement one. And so I have a name of a sound that I want to use in a unit, for instance, perhaps. Yeah, anyway, lots of sounds to explore in here, so I'm going to stop the sound player. There's no reason to keep playing it. I'm not going to get into playing sounds, particularly in the unit that I build. The other thing I have is a test script. Creating a new script is easy. You just click plus new and say, hey, what do you want to call this? And you type in a name and hit save, and it'll appear. I'm going to click E to start editing. This is just a test script where I can dump example code where I want to mess around with something. Usually it's for debugging. So if I want to see why something is broken or not working properly, I'll mess around with it a little bit. So I've got, let's do something a little fun here. Before I run that script, let's go over to the unit. So we're interested in what's going on with this thing. Maybe build towers and connect to it. Where's that coming from? Let's figure that out. All right, so I'm going to go into the CPAC Manager. So you just click Open CPAC Manager on Mods. And we can see a number of CPACs. And we see Mission, Map Indicator, Rubble, and Temple. Well, Mission is probably our current mission. But there's a Mission 4RPL file that we can look at, which I'll probably do in a moment. But we can also see that this file is under the global control section. It's not a unit, but it's under the global control section. It's not under pre, and pre and post are frames. So for every frame of the game time, so there are 30 frames per second. So 30 times a second, this script is being run after the frame has processed. So we have mission 4RPL, and if I click here, it's running when paused, which explains why that text changed even though I paused the game. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and edit this, and I've already scrolled down to, hey, maybe build towers and connect to it. Oh, hey, there we go, maybe build towers and connect to it. That's kind of interesting. We found the text in the mission. And this is where we get our first taste of 4RPL. This is the mission for this map, and we see set object text, map indicator, which if we look up a little bit, we see create unit on terrain, map indicator, which if I scroll back to the top, is an internal global variable with this funky string. This is known as a GUID, globally unique identifier. It ends in E245. Okay. And then we have a position, X and Z position, that's probably Y, and then it creates the unit on the terrain and stores the resulting unit in a variable called map indicator. Then the first thing it does after that is set object text, retrieves the unit, says, use this unit, map indicator, and find the text sub-object and set that text to this looks interesting. Then it sets a timer for 10 seconds because it's 30 frames a second. So 300 is 10 times 30. So 10 seconds. And then somewhere up above, it switches states to state 6 once the timer reaches 0. And then it uses that same variable and changes the text to maybe build towers and connect to it. All right, well, that's interesting. So I'm going to hop over to my test for RPL, and let's just, I've already written some code. It basically says find all units from my roughly this location, 100 units, look at 100 in a big 100 unit circle and try. Basically, I'm looking for that one unit on the map and store any units. Then I pull out the first unit that it finds, which it's only going to find one, and store it in the main unit. Then I set the object text to high. So I'm gonna see if I run my 4RPL if that's the result. So we're gonna go 4RPL console and we're gonna run once. Boop. And we have successfully changed the text of this unit. Now I want to go back to that unit for a moment. And map indicator. It doesn't have any scripts, it doesn't have any textures. So where is it? Oh look, units. So you can actually build a unit that doesn't actually do anything. It's controlled externally, which is what map indicator is. And if we open this up, this unit up, we see it is a big, tall, yellow thing. And over here we see object, script, settings, UI. And we see two objects here. One is named post and one is named text. If I open post, we can see that this yellow line is actually a really long, thin cube. It's been stretched out and its color has been made yellow. So it's actually an elongated cube by just changing its scale and position. Okay, that's cool. And then we see text, which is just really a placeholder that sits atop of this yellow line. So we can't actually see it. We just have to know that it's actually there. Okay, so this is, kind of interesting here. Doesn't have any scripts, doesn't have any settings. It's just, it's just a thing that's here. It's a visual thing that then gets populated by the mission script. All right, so let's say we like this unit and we want to use it on our map, just as a test. Okay, let's say there's a unit that you really like and you want to use it elsewhere. You can export a unit, so we'll go ahead and export our map indicator and go ahead and close that. And we've pretty much done everything that I care to do on this map, and I'm gonna exit the mission and go back to the main screen and get into the mission editor. I'm going to use my test map. I have a big old 256 by 256 flat plane test map that I stuck a bunch of units on to that I could just play with, a bunch of resources and whatnot. And so I'm able to play with, experiment with units, play with units, debug units in this context much more easily here. All right, so let's open the editor and go over to mods, and we're going to open our CPAC Manager. The first thing we'll do is we're going to import that map indicator. There we go. There's our map indicator. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back to editing the test script, and we're going to basically plop a map indicator on this map just for fun. I'm commenting out my other code, and I'm going to go ahead and create a unit on the terrain and set its text to high, and then I'll output the unit type, which should be this GUID. And there it is. We've got our imported unit over here, and it says hi. Yay! All right. To delete a unit, Shift X on the keyboard. Boom, gone. All right, so that's the basics of importing a unit. Now let's create a brand new unit from scratch, and we've kind of got a feel for some of the interface. So we're gonna dig in even deeper now into the CPAC Manager. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new CPAC, and we're gonna call this Borg Cube. All right, I'm not going to do any meshes or textures, as I said earlier. That's a totally different exercise for some other time. Create a new 4RPL file called Borg Cube. Oops, I probably want it all one word, just for sanity's sake. Okay, now we're going to add a unit here, and we're going to call you Borg Cube. Although maybe I should not do spaces for that either. It doesn't matter too much. All right, we're going to add a layer here. I'm going to call this the cube. We're going to select A nice cube from here that looks kind of like the Borg. Let's see here. What's nice? Let's go with, oh, I don't know. Let's see here. Yeah, let's do this one. That one looks fine. But it's kind of tiny. I mean, let's boost that size up. Let's go 7 by 7 by 7. Oh yeah, now that's looking good. That's a pretty good size. But now it's below the plane. We need it at least at the level plane here. So let's bump it at like 3.5. Oh, whoops. 2.5. 2.4. 3. 2. That looks pretty good. Maybe it's kind of hard to tell if it's below the plane or not there. Let's go 2.3 just to be on the safe side. Okay, that is above the plane. Yeah. 2.2 then. 2.2 it is. All right. Yeah, it is just above the plane there. Okay, cool. So we got our cube. It's nothing particularly special. Let's darken it down just a hair, just to make it kind of more ominous. All right. All of this is basically meaningless right here. All right, so now we're going to also create a text above the cube. So we need the position here to be, oh, I don't know. Let's see here. If we put it 6, if we put it at 6, that's maybe a little more. 6.5. Yeah, let's do 6.5. That'll look okay. All right. All right. We've got our cube. We got our invisible text that will appear above here. Let's go over to scripts. We need to add our Borg cube 4RPL file that we haven't actually done anything with yet. Come over here. We need to change the footprint size to be probably 5 by 5 by, oh, let's see here. The height. Well, I mean, 5 works, kind of. Yeah, I mean, if I go 6, that includes the text potentially. We'll make the build cost 20 for now. I'll cover that in a bit. Might as well make health 5. This guy's gonna have a bunch of health. Maybe, I don't know, can move, can specify target, can build land anywhere, only on resource, destroy on uneven, occupies land, damaged by creeper, connects to network, connect position. We probably don't want it down. We don't want the connect position here. Let's move it up to 3.5. 3.5 looks good. 3.5 for connect position. Request packets, yes. Stops creeper, can stun. Target, well, it's a Borg cube. Well, yeah, I guess you can stun Borg cubes. Okay, cool. ERNs are special. I'm not going to get into ERN stuff. It's like ERNs are a boost. Yeah, sure. If you want to get into that, fine. Not going to mess with that here. Oh, we need a player menu. We're going to call this Borg. Struct, user selectable, shake camera on destroy, sure. All right, we want to show the unit build bar. We want to show the ammo bar. We want to, we need to move both of those. We need to move all 3 bars because they're currently inside the cube. Let's see here. Yeah, build bar position needs to be something like 4.5. 4.5. Apply settings. Oh wait, no, it's build bar. Duh. Oops. 0.15. My bad. That was correct. I want 0.15, but I want to move it out front. So minus 3.5. What does that do? Not quite where I want it. I kind of want it right here on the line. So let's try 2.5. Oh, there we go. Great. 2.5 for that one. So now both the ammo and the build bar are in the same position. That's fantastic. Now we need to get the health bar to be above. That's what I wanted, to be up at like 3.5. Well, like maybe 3.7. Fly. Really? Where is this thing? Oh, 4.7. Sorry. It's still inside. There we go. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. All right, we got all our bars organized. Let's see here. Keep going. Unit can be drag selected. Sure. Explosion scale. Well, when this thing goes, this needs to be a big explosion, not a little one. So we'll do that. Oh, and so far, here's what our Borg cube looks like. It's kind of boring on top because it's just kind of a bland texture. Nothing special about it, but you know, it'll work. It'll work fine for what we need to do. Range 30 is a good starting point for a unit. Boost a unit like this anyway. 30 is a pretty good range. Boost range with height. Yeah. Max ammo 50. Energy can request ammo. Yep. Let's see here. Line of sight always visible. Ignore terrain. Okay. I think that's a good starting point. All right, so we've made our overall appearance of our unit, and as I said, you can get into meshes and textures elsewhere. That's another exercise for another time. Okay, so we've got our basic unit designed. We still need to write code for it because it doesn't actually do anything yet. And this is where we get into for RPL. When you start a new unit, it's empty. There's nothing here. The first thing that you might want to do is, let's say you're making a unit you want other people to use. The best way to do, let's say that this thing is going to shoot some projectiles sometimes, and you want to set the default to 3. So this is a setting that can be controlled via the GUI interface in the CPAC Manager. That you define settings first. And that can be really useful for making quick global changes to a unit and not having to dig into the 4RPL to find what you're looking for. So that allows you to expose custom values and variables. All right. All right. So the first thing we need to do is the first thing that happens when any unit is put on the map is it gets constructed. So the first thing we want to do in our script is, in this case, while it's constructing, we don't want to do anything. Get unit constructing self. End it. So if you're used to and return. If the unit is constructing, don't do anything. All right. All right. So if you're used to writing code, this looks pretty familiar. It's a if statement, get unit constructing, self refers to the unit itself. And in this case, it just says return. So stop executing code. So while it's building, it'll just, for every single frame that while it's building, it'll come in here, it'll execute this and be like, yep, okay, I'm done, and bail out. So that can be useful. All right, so now let's get into something a little funkier. Once it's built, what do we want to do? Well, let's start with something like this, where we go grab state and compare it to 0. Now, what's state, you ask? Well, state is a brand new variable that doesn't exist, and so its value is like 0 or nil or whatever, and so this statement evaluates to true. And what we're going to do is we're going to go set object text self, text, we are the Borg. And then we're going to set a timer. We have for 5 seconds, 150 frames, so at 30 frames per second. It's for 150 frames, so 30 frames per second for 5 seconds is 150, so 30 times 5. Okay, and then we're gonna store 1 into state. Basically, what I'm doing here is similar to what the mission file was doing, which is moving from one state to the next. It's a very clean way to design a unit, is to have, okay, this unit is now in this state, and there's some condition that has to be met before it moves on to the next state, and then some condition has to be met before it moves on to the next state, etc. and so forth. So this is the very first state that gets executed, and we're going to set the object text. Remember, we have over here on objects, we have a text. We have invisible text placement here called text hovering above the cube. So we have this already here. All right. So let's give this a shot. I'm going to save this code. I'm going to come back into the editor. I'm going to compile all scripts. And it'll tell me, yep, it was successful. Dismiss that. Close this. And we are now ready to test our unit. All right. Plant it. Build it. Go 4x speed. Okay, we are the Borg. And we're getting some ammo that doesn't matter. We're not going to do anything with it for this, but okay. So we have our unit here. That's cool. Okay. All right. Cool. We have our unit here. Reopen the CPAC Manager. Come back in here. That looked pretty good, but it's not. We haven't done a whole lot. Now I want to go back to the 4RPL for a moment. And if you're confused by it, like, where did this come from? Where did this come from? Where did this come from? Get unit constructing, set object text, set timer 0. You're confused by that? All right, here's the thing. The 4RPL reference page is where you're going to spend about, I don't know, half of your time. You're going to find functions. You're going to look at details about those functions. And the important thing is if it's got set or get in front, you chop that off mentally, and you can run a search for obj text and get to unit objects. And so here's set object text here, which I've already got open, and we can see that it takes 3 parameters: unit, object name, and then the text. We can do the same thing for unit constructing. We search for unit constructing, get, and timer 0 set. So all of that is documented in this documentation. It is pretty powerful language, very capable, but it is a little bit dense to kind of sift through all the documentation. All right, let's move on to the next thing. So we want to continue with our text. I'm just going to go ahead and grab this code, copy and paste it. And we're going to go, you will be assimilated. And we're going to say, if our state is 1, and this is where things get weird, we're going to make that change to that if statement there, and we're going to switch our state, once successful, to 2. So now we have a test here, and this looks, if you're used to programming in other languages, this looks really weird. So 4RPL is a stack-based language. you really read it right to left. So we say we're gonna compare two things, and we're doing a logical and. If something is true and something else is true, then execute what's inside here. Then it picks up EQ, so it's going to say if something is equal to something else, and then it's going to say, okay, get the value of timer 0 and compare it to 0. And if that's true, and if the state is equal, if the state is equal to 1, so if the state is 1 and timer has expired, then it will change the text to you will be assimilated. And then it'll set the timer again and change the state to 2. And then we can just continue along with this theme and finish out our thought. Resistance is futile. Okay. So we've finished out our thought. We need to change that to there. We got our state 2 comparison, get timer. That all looks good. All right, so save again. Come back into Crreeper World's CPAC Manager, compile all scripts, successfully compiled, close, test, and let it build. Takes a moment. We are the Borg. You will be assimilated, although that's really fast. I should go 1x. And then resistance is futile. Neat. All right, destroy that unit. And go back into CPAC Manager. Okay, so now we're back on our Borg cube. Okay, so we're on our Borg cube there. And then for our final state, we'll just blow up the unit. Why not? So once the timer reaches 0 and we're at state 3, and if, and then we're gonna destroy unit self, and then we're gonna say false, false, false. And what does that do, you ask? Well, we can go back over and look at the wiki for destroy unit, which says pass in the unit. Do we want to suppress the effect or not? The effect being the explosion effect and the sound. Explosion effect and the sound of the unit blowing up. In this case, no, we want that to happen. User initiated, we'll set that to false because we didn't initiate it. The user did not initiate it. We initiated it automatically. Automatic self-destruct. And then do not log. Logging is whether or not this unit shows up in the final record when it's submitted for posting scores. So we're saying false, false, false. Cool. So we save our script. We compile all scripts. It's successful. Now here is our completed unit. Well, it's not completed, but we're well on our way to making something happen. Go back to 4x here. Get it building faster. We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Excellent, excellent. Resistance is futile. And then, boom. Just blows itself to smithereens. Suicides. Well, that was cool. There's one thing I want to comment on about custom units is that the tendency is to think I'm making a unit, and the first thing is I want to make this unit basically overpowered. It's what is an overpowered unit? Well, it's a unit that doesn't have an Achilles heel. It doesn't have any drawbacks to it. Every single standard unit in Crreeper World has a drawback. Especially weapons. If we're talking weapons, why did I stick that under there? Anyway, whatever. I don't know why I stuck the Borg unit under struct. It's a weapon. Anyway, so every weapon here let's take a cannon, for instance. What is the cannon's Achilles heel? Well, if Crreeper is piled up way too high, it can't deal with that. It also has a very short range compared to some other units. And so it's a close range unit that can deal with some Crreeper, but not a lot. Mortars, on the other hand, they can shoot further, and they're more powerful, but they're terrible at short range, dealing with short range things. Whereas the cannons are great at that. Mortars are terrible at that. And they also are costly in terms of energy. They cost 40 energy, but they also chew up a lot of energy just to fire. So that's kind of the mortar's Achilles heel. But if you pair these together, they kind of offset each other's weaknesses, and together they're able to combat the creeper much more effectively than by themselves, just by themselves on either front. So that's what I mean by not making an overpowered unit. Is, if the cannon could do it all, everybody would just build cannons, and that's all anyone would ever build. But because the cannon doesn't have long distance and it can't deal with a ton of creeper, you have to build other stuff. So you have to throw in something that makes it not the greatest unit ever, that's not super overpowered. All right, let's do one last thing to our cube before I call it quits on this. Let's get it rotating once it's built. Let's animate it a little bit, and let's not just have it sit there and talk. To do that, we're going to start up here at this part of the script, and we're going to rotate the cube 1 degree every frame. So I like to write comments as I'm doing stuff here. Just to kind of, if I have to come back through this, it helps if I have a little bit of commenting to know what in the world I'm doing. Oops. Get object rotation self. And we're looking for the sub-object of cube, which, if we go back in here, remember we had under objects we have cube, so we're selecting this guy. We're going to go false, and we're going to store it into a variable called rotational degrees, and then we're going to go rotdeg.y, because this is what's known as a v3, a v3 vector. So we're going to rotate it around on the y-axis. Y-axis is pointing toward the camera. That's what we want to rotate around. So we're going to go and plus, so add 1 to this guy, to the y rotation, rotdeg y. I'm going to store it back into there. Then we're going to set our object rotation and grab that, and then we're going to say see, that's where the syntax highlighting comes in handy. It showed me red, and I'm like, whoops, I mistyped that. So syntax highlighting is extremely useful, hence Notepad++. All right, so we've got theoretically our object rotation. We'll come back over here, compile all scripts. Successfully compiled, excellent. Now we're going to go back to our structures and put down a new Borg cube. While it's building, it just sits there. So we'll speed that up a little bit here. We are the Borg, and now it's rotating. We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. And resistance is futile. And then, kaboom. Very nice. Well, that is basically everything that I wanted to show in this video on making custom units. Hopefully, by watching this, you've gotten accustomed to some of the interface. Even if it's a little awkward, it's it's a okay interface. It works. So as long as it works, who cares what it looks like, particularly as long as it works okay. One thing that I want to end with is that don't think you're alone in making maps or units or things like that, because there's an entire community of people who are here on Discord who can help out with questions, or you get stuck on something. Oh, I forgot to mention, when I get stuck on things, I first try to debug it myself. Go, okay, can I just grab some code out of the unit pack and plop it in my test script, and throw some trace all SP statements in, and dump out some variable values, and that usually solves the problem. But if I run into true difficulties, I'll throw a question up on the map making support Discord channel, and they're extremely helpful people. So you should definitely be on Discord at the same time as the wiki, and it'll shorten the amount of time it takes to build something. All right, well, that's all I have, and I apologize for the video length, but hopefully this gets you started building custom units, and you feel more comfortable going at it now that you have had at least a little taste of it. One thing I do recommend is, if you see a unit you like, don't be afraid to open the CPAC Manager and go look at its source code. If you like the sweeper, for instance, there are 3 major units within the game that you should also check out, that the source code is available to. All you have to do is enable airships, berthas, and sweepers. Those are all CPACs that you can, once you've enabled them, will show up in the CPAC Manager, and you can look at their source code directly and say, oh, here's how the sweeper works. It's an actual legit game unit developed by Knucklecracker. So I mean, it's a pretty high quality unit that you can look at. The sweeper's that unit that spins around, has the little laser beams, and wipes out levels out Crreeper to the laser beam level. Unless it hits rock, then it gets cut short. So you can look at the sweeper unit, or the bertha, or the airship, and get a feel for how those units work. So if you see a custom unit, you're like, how do they do X, Y, and Z? The source code is in the CPAC. And so you can easily take a look at how other things are being done to figure out how to do your own thing. All right. I think that's everything that I wanted to cover. Good luck making your own custom units.